Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of All In with Nate. It's been so long since I've done this show. I apologize, y'all, because the Falcons been home the last 2 weeks, and most times when the Falcons come home, my voice is shot. So it's been on me. We've been wanting to do a show for weeks, but it's been on me. If you talk to me after the game, you know my voice is always gone after the game. So forgive me on that, but on a lighter note, the Falcons are getting ready to play in about an hour and a half against the Panthers on Thursday Night Football. For everybody that's local, the Falcons will be on TV. I know NFL Network's been doing the games on Amazon Prime as of recent, and NFL Plus if you got NFL Plus. But if you live in Atlanta, the game will be on Fox 5 tonight, so you do not have to worry about Amazon Prime. But before we get into the game, I grabbed my boy Mike back. Mike, welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back. It's always good to be back to talk about our beloved Falcons, win or lose. So far the future looks bright, but we can't talk about the future right now. We got a big game tonight, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's funny because the Falcons, I predicted them to be four. I think when we did our initial preview this season, I said the Falcons would be 4-5 through 9 games. I did not see us beating the 49ers. I thought it was a potential game that we could have won, but the Falcons are tied with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers entering this game for first place. They have a shot to go back over 500. At 500 with a win tonight against the Carolina Panthers. But once again, the Falcons have put themselves in position to be in first place or tied for first place. Tampa has the edge because of the Brady situation. We're gonna leave that alone. But to be honest with you guys, I'm actually surprised with this Atlanta Falcons team through 9 games because I was just hoping they were going to be competitive of some sorts this season. But to be 4-5 through the first 9 games in a rebuilding year, you're 82 to 85 million over the cap. And to be in this position, even competing right now, is actually incredible by this team this year. So I just want to get a chance to see what favors them down the stretch. Because once again, the Falcons are in a very unexpected spot to be competing for a playoff spot, because also the Falcons are tied for first place with Tampa having the current edge. But I don't know if a lot of you are aware, but the Falcons are also in the wild card hunt as a 7 seed because the 49ers currently are 4-4, and right now Atlanta has the edge over San Francisco. But Mike, how do you feel about the Falcons through the first 9 games so far?
Everybody, Nate is a very modest individual. He says all that, but during our if you paid attention to our preseason show, our first show of the season, we all were about in the same area about where the Falcons will fall this year as far as win totals. I think we are around 7 to 10. We all said around that, maybe about 8 or 9, but Nate is being very modest. But to be honest with you, the level of competitiveness that we've displayed every single week, albeit the Outlander in Cincinnati, we just ran into a buzzsaw, but we still made it competitive. Right before halftime, we didn't have enough. We were going through some injuries. We didn't have Cordero, so forth. But I'm not surprised about our win total right now, but I'm surprised about how we go about it. Teams, they say it every week. You know what the Falcons are going to do. They're going to run the ball. They don't care that they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball on 2nd and 13 sometimes. They're going to run the ball on 3rd and 7 sometimes. But that's the identity of this team. And that's something that you can't sugarcoat it, That's who Arthur Smith is. The team is behind him 100%. On past Falcons teams, they haven't always taken the identity of the head coach. But this team they believe in Arthur Smith. They believe in what he's building, and they're going to do whatever it takes to win the game. He's going to put them in the position. He's going to call a great game. He's going to call a great play, and it's up to the players, to execute. But even looking at the numbers, the Falcons have one of the best offenses in the league, and we're just primarily an offense rushing team. But, that opens up some holes in the secondary with play action. We haven't always executed. We're going to talk about that later on, how we missed a big play late in that game against the Chargers that probably could change the outcome. But, hey, that's where we are right now. We're in a rebuild, as Nate said. We're not supposed to be here, but we are here, and we're not going to run away from the moment. I expect us to continue to play the way we play, tough every single week. And one of the areas that we were concerned about at the beginning of the season was the defense. We thought the defensive line would maybe be a weakness. Although we had some great pieces to surround around Grady Jarrett, we brought in some even better pieces in free agency with the limited amount of cap space that we had. But we didn't think the secondary would be a weakness. But injuries happen. We've been without Casey Hayward. He's on the IR. We don't know if he's even going to return this season. We're currently without AJ Terrell. He's already been ruled out for tonight. And the secondary has been getting torched. They got torched against Cincinnati, but Cincinnati, when they're gelling, they can torch anybody in this league. But the secondary really, they made some mistakes last week, but we were still in a position to win the game. That's a common theme that me and Nate continue to talk about with this team. We have deficiencies like any team. We may have more than in the Super Bowl contenders, but regardless of that, we're always in a position to win the game. And that was further evident last week against the Chargers. That game was over. We should have had no opportunity to win that game, but a fumble occurred. We had a defensive lineman running with the ball. Hey, that's football, but, I'm excited. That was a bonehead way to lose the game, but, hey, we gave it our all, and that's all I can ask for, because that's better than what most Falcon teams have done in the recent past.
Man, I got to add to what you just said at the end of that. I'm tired of going to home games that have the most wackiest endings. Last week, it was the Panthers game, which it's crazy. We are 2 weeks removed from that wild ball game. And then last week, Sunday, was a very Falconish ball game where you get the fumble recovery and the boy lose the ball. But as you said, the Falcons have been very, very competitive for what they have on this team. I have a couple of minor issues with the team. Last week wasn't so much of a coaching's loss. I will go ahead and say it came out of bad execution last week from the players. I mean, there was 2 missed deep balls from Mariota and Pitts that could have possibly turned the game. We might have won the game by maybe 10 last week. Drake London, love you, Drake London. You got ripped by that veteran by the name of Khalil Mack on national TV. Embarrassing. Hey, I don't want to see it no more this season. But that was another situation. But as Mike said, this team is very competitive. And to be honest, no jab at the Carolina Panthers. This is a ball game you need to win if you're trying to make a run down the stretch, because I'm going to throw this comment up here because he hit exactly what I was about to say. This my boy Rob on Twitch said we're in the soft part of this schedule. We make a run. You are absolutely correct. The Falcons' next 3 to 4 games favors them. If they can possibly find a way to win this ball game tonight, I'm not counting this team out because Carolina played us well. PJ Walker played us well. They really should have won that game last week in Atlanta, but the Panthers decided they wanted to be more of a Falcons in the Falcons. So, but again, if the Falcons find a way to win tonight, the next couple of games, you got Chicago coming in here next Sunday. You got the Commanders in Washington. You don't know what team's going to show up there. Pittsburgh is definitely not Pittsburgh from the past. And you got a bye week after that. If you find a way to possibly run 3 of the next 4 off, you may have a different conversation in December entering that second Saints game. But, don't want to get too far ahead because you have to handle business tonight. But once again, the Falcons, the thing that is interesting about this Falcon team through 9 games is we're in rebuild. On the flip side, we're really not supposed to be in a lot of these games. But on the flip side, you're angry at them to an extent because it's like, outside of, like Mike said, the shellacking out in Cincinnati, and even the first 3 quarters in LA, the Falcons have been in every single ball game this season. You blew 2 home games against the Chargers and the Saints. You got completely robbed against the Buccaneers at the end of that game. And the other games were nail biters. But at this point, the Falcons have flat out been in all these games. But the thing is, if they're going to make an unexpected playoff push, which we're not on here saying that they're going to go to the playoffs. Let me go ahead and get out of the way. I would love it, but at the same time, this is still a team that we are looking at. Hey, they're in a position to rebuild, but there's still some things they got to clean up if they're going to get hot down the stretch and try to make a playoff run. They're going to have to get balanced over the next couple of weeks. We got Cordero Patterson back. We got that's a big move for us. But I will say this, Mike hit a note on how great our rushing attack has been this season. They have been great all season long. My problem with the Falcons is not going to show tonight because it's pouring down raining, I believe, in Carolina tonight. There was pouring down raining in Georgia earlier today. So the Falcons probably won't throw the ball much tonight, but Marcus Mariota's going to have to get that passing attack going at some point in the next couple of weeks because we got to get balanced if we're going to try to make a playoff push. And the Falcons, I don't know if a lot of you are aware, currently the Falcons have the 9th highest scoring offense in the league, but the Falcons are 30th in passing. We are 30th in passing right now. We're 30th in attempts. I mean, of course, we all know we run the ball. But on the flip side, they're number 3 in rush attempts, number 4 in rushing, number 7 in touchdown runs. So the Falcons are destroying it on the ground. Like, they're great on the ground. But you got to get, if you can get to maybe even 20th or 25th, this team might be in a little better position. So, honestly, one of the things I want to see over the next couple of weeks is the Falcons really get this passing attack. You got to get Kyle Pitts and Drake London going at some point because the chemistry is off. As Mike mentioned about the Kyle Pitts play last week, there's no anywhere that shouldn't have been a touchdown to end that ball game. It should have been 24-17. Falcons would win. But once again, those are the mistakes that you got to clean up if you're planning on really making a run. And I got to give Arthur Smith, even the front office, some credit because to get what you've gotten out of this group through 9 weeks is actually impressive. And we actually got some potential on both sides of the ball. As Mike mentioned, we had injuries in the secondary. Unfortunately, losing A.J. Terrell and Casey Hayward was tough because as quiet as it was kept, the Falcons secondary was actually pretty decent through the first few weeks prior to those injuries. And since then, people just been lighting us up, and I pray P.J. Walker will go for 300 on us tonight. But, Mike, I'm going to ask you this question. What do you want to see the Falcons really work on in the next couple of weeks if this team plan on making a legit playoff run?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, AJ Terrell has already been ruled out for the night. So which means he's going to have – we don't play until November 20th against the Bears. He's going to have 10 days from today to get healthy. And I've been down on Justin Fields. He hasn't shown anything, but it looks like that was more on the coaching staff. And he's been really good lately. And I know he ran for 172 yards last week, but he's shown that he's a capable passer. They've started to put weapons around him. They already had Mooney. They had Cole committed at tight end. Now they added Chase Claypool at the trade deadline. Their weapons are starting to build around him. Is what I'm trying to say. But me and Nate mentioned this during week 1, week 2. And the comment below says that we're in a weak part of the schedule. I want to make note of something. We said that this would be the primary time to put in Desmond Ridder. But we didn't expect for the Falcons to be tied for first place during this stretch. We thought we win 7, 8, 9 games, but we didn't know that the Buccaneers would be dysfunctional. Tom Brady missing practice, getting preferential treatment. They just a mess. We didn't know. We thought thought that the Saints would regress even further without Drew Brees and Sean Payton in the black and gold for the first time since the early mid 2000s, but we didn't know they would be this inadequate. So here we are. The coaching staff is in a position now that Arthur Smith said it last year. We're not tanking. We're trying to win games. So with that being said, while this may be the opportune time to put in Desmond Ridder, see what he can do, we're in the middle of a divisional race, and every week matters, every game matters. So unless Mariota has 2 or 3 weeks where he's just an abomination, he's going to be in that role. So what that says is, like Nate said, we're in the soft part of the schedule. Doesn't mean we're overlooking anybody, because we don't have the luxury. We're not the Chiefs. We're not the Eagles who are undefeated. We don't have the luxury to mess around and overlook people. We have to go in every game with the same mentality that we're going to impose our will on the offensive end, and we're going to play bend but don't break defense until our secondary can get healthy. So with that said, what does that mean? Carolina today, Chicago, the Bears next week. The Commanders, like Nate said, you don't know what Commanders you're going to get. You have the Steelers. Steelers are in a position now where they're talking about letting Najee Harris have a split backfield with their rookie Warren in their backfield. That says a lot. They already traded Chase Claypool. Watt, he's been injured, so that's going to be a game that you got on man going to be an opportunity to get a win that you probably going to be favored in that game. And then game that I'll be at the Saints. We don't know what the Saints will look like by then. We don't know what their quarterback situation is. I'm down here in Baton Rouge, close to New Orleans, and the fan base wants Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill. They don't want Andy Dalton. So we don't know what their quarterback situation will look like by December 18th. But what will the Falcons have to do to continue on the path that they're on an upward trajectory? What should they continue to do? Step one, get Cordell Patterson healthy. He's healthy now. He looked fantastic last week. I don't want to overuse him. Like he said, there's enough carries to go around for us all to eat. I love that mentality. Everybody in the running back room has that mentality. And if that's the case, everybody will be fresh. You saw Tyler out. You saw everybody running hard in the second half of the game. Tyler, he was ripping off 10, 15-yard runs in the third quarter. The defense is going to get tired because they're taking pounders from Cordero. Cordero, he caught a body last week. And that's overshadowed because we didn't win the game. But the fact of the matter is there's a choke of a body in Mercedes-Benz right now, of a body that was laid there to rest. But on a more serious note, the Falcons have to continue to dominate the line of scrimmage, and we have to get healthy. That's the thing. This team is capable of winning this division, but we have to get healthy. And I know that's not an excuse because everybody is dealing with injuries. The Saints are dealing with injuries. Baker Mayfield, he was the Panthers starting quarterback, and that's why P.J. Walker is in there. The Bucs are dealing with injuries. We all are dealing with injuries. I get that. And I know that's not the most amazing answer, but controlling the line of scrimmage, continuing to dominate the line of scrimmage, and getting healthy. And we've played we haven't imploded without AJ Terrell or Casey Hayward. Darren Hall and Armstrong, they've held their own at times. They played well enough for us to win games. Case in point, last week against Herbert. Now I knew they were out Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, but they still have a very capable offense. They still had Austin Eckler, who's a touchdown machine. I know this from fantasy football. This man, it doesn't matter who's on that field, that man's going to score him 2 or 3 touchdowns nearly every game. And Justin Herbert, regardless of who he's throwing the ball to, he has an elite arm talent to get it to whoever's open. So regardless of that fact, they only gave up 245 passing yards. Yes, it wasn't pretty. It's almost 300 yards. But to say that you're down to your third and fourth, fifth string cornerbacks, they're playing well enough to win games. That's all I can ask for. It is up to the rest of the team to step up, knowing that they have a deficiency on the back end because of injuries. Step up and elevate their play. If they do that, we will win tonight. and we'll continue to do what we've been doing all season.
I love how you put that. And I'm going to add to what you're saying in regards to the defense. The defense has a decent amount of talent. To me, I've seen guys, but I'm going to say one of my problems with the defense, it's more so a coaching thing, vice versa to a player thing. Because in my personal opinion, the Falcons have the defense to run a 4-3. I feel like Lorenzo Carter is a pass rusher. I feel like Ebiketie is a pass rusher. I feel like D'Angelo Malone can be rotated. I feel like the Falcons I feel like Troy Anderson should be a middle linebacker or a left outside linebacker. I feel like the Falcons have guys that if you set them up in a 4-3 defense will absolutely eat. But the problem is, I don't know what DPs run at times. 1 minute we're 3-4. Next minute we 1-2-3. Next minute we 4-3. I don't know what this guy's calling half of the time. I have a very bad issue with him with our scheme. So to me, I feel like the Falcons, I feel like part of our problem, we have injuries, as Mike mentioned in the secondary. We definitely have those injuries. But I also feel like that also plays a factor in why a lot of times we don't get after the quarterback like we should. Because you got at times where, and if you watch every Falcon game, the Falcon fans, you know this very, very well. There are many times where you might see second-year guy Donajay out of Notre Dame. You may see Abula Anderson, Grady Jarrett, and Taquan Graham. You may see 4 guys who 2 or 3 of them should really be a defensive tackle lining up as the 4 pass rushers. Who's getting after the quarterback other than Grady Jarrett? Nobody. But when you see a guy like a Lorenzo Carter and an Arnold Ebiketie on the field with Grady, you're seeing pressure get back there. But it's not consistent. And that's one of my issues that I've been having all season long with Dean Pease. Because Mike said, hey, perfect. These young dudes are scrappy. They are bend but don't break. But I don't feel like we've seen them hit their stride yet because at times their play calling and this scheme does not set them up to be successful. We give up a ton of yards passing, but a lot of times you're holding the team to a field goal. Even if you give them a touchdown, your offense is answering it. So this is Falcon fans, this is the reality of the situation. We've scored 217 points in 9 games. We've given up 226. So that tells you how close all of our ball games have been. And the one game where we gave up a ton of points was at Cincinnati. Other than that, every other game, lost to the Saints by 1, lost to the Chargers on the field goal, lost to the Bucs by 6, lost to the Rams by 4. So you see there's a trend going on here where the Falcons are in every single ball game. You won by 3 against Seattle, which that win now looks amazing considering how solid the Seahawks look. They could possibly win the NFC West. So this team is competing in every single game, week in and week out. And as Mike said, I think at this point, I have my ups and downs with Marcus Mariota, but because the Falcons are right there in the midst of first place in the wild card picture, it's hard to go out here and say we're going to throw a rookie out there to start this week. It's not one of those situations where you're desperate because you're losing all these games. You've been winning despite him throwing for less than 200 yards. This when he might throw for $150 and run for 75, and you're winning a game by 7. So they're taking that because a win is a win. However, on the flip side, you're looking at it like this. You drafted Kyle Pitts, number 4 overall last year. You drafted Drake London, number 8 this year. You see the talent in those 2 guys. You want to see your passing offense start to show themselves at some point. And I'm going to go ahead and say it again. It's not going to happen tonight. I'll be shocked if it happens tonight. It's supposed to rain in Charlotte. I don't see it happening tonight. But I do see it becoming a case where the Falcons are going to have to show that they can throw the ball. I think the next couple of weeks after this week, the Falcons are going to have to start getting that passing attack going, because as Mike said, Justin Fields is starting to look really solid in Chicago. They're not, the wins aren't showing, but his effort is showing. And Justin Fields, if our secondary isn't healthy next week, Justin Fields could have a field day on us. The following week, you got Carson Wentz. That Washington receiving core is still pretty freaking good. They may be inconsistent, but again, those guys are talented out there.
If he's healthy, you might have Taylor Heineke.
If he's healthy, you made a great point there. But even with Pittsburgh, you don't know what Pittsburgh team you're going to get. But so that's why we're saying the Falcons need to pull it together over this next 4 weeks. You got to go 3 or 4. In my personal opinion, if the Falcons are going to make a legitimate run in late December, January, because your final 3 games are against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. You have Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. Yes, they have a losing record right now, but DeAndre Hopkins has been balling for that team. They're going to be a scrappy team all the way through. And then you got Tampa week 18. So you got to get your wins now. So I'm going to ask you this question, Mike. What is a surprise position for you that the Falcons have been showing some strength at? And what do you think is the biggest problem that the Falcons really to address at some point?
I would say it's multiple positions, actually. But I'm surprised at the running back depth behind Cordell Patterson. I understand we drafted a running back, and I know the Caleb Huntley situation, and I know we actually brought in Williams, but he hasn't been healthy. But I was concerned about the running back position, the running back depth, and I actually talked about this earlier in one of the previous shows about how I predicted. I don't take any pleasure in this. I'm not happy that I was correct, but I predicted what happened to Cordero would happen. If you look at his age, you look at the physicality that he runs with, it was inevitable that he was going to eventually get hurt, which is why we drafted a running back when we brought in a free agent. But I did not expect us to have the quality running backs that we have currently. And we haven't always been able to tell if we actually had decent running backs because of the offensive line, which leads me to them. I want to transition to them. People always say it's easy to run block because it's about will, it's about desire. But I don't think that's always the case. I mean, if you think about it, we can just look at the college level. Alabama, Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to be one of the top 2 running backs gone in the draft, and they have a bunch of other talented running back. But if run blocking was just about desire and just wanting the will to do it, then why don't they lead the country in rushing? Why haven't they leaned on rushing if Bryce Young is 100%? If it was about just desire and the will to do it, it would be easy for them. They probably wouldn't have 2 losses. So I'm not going to dismiss the growth of the Atlanta Falcons offensive line. This is the number 1 position to me that has progressed leaps and bounds from previous years. And you can talk about the sacks. Yeah, I think Marcus Mariota has given up 18 sacks. I guarantee if you go back and look at the tape, 9 of those sacks are on him. And that's because of the style that he plays. Sometimes you can see him in the backfield. He's shaking people off. He's getting around. He's extending plays, but that doesn't happen every time. Sometimes he tries to move when he doesn't have to. Sometimes he could just step up in the pocket and deliver a throw, but it's just something that even Matt Ryan deal with sometimes. Even Matt Ryan sometimes he could have just stepped up into the pocket, but he didn't. They used to call him happy feet, and the offensive line would give up a sack. So I say that to say the offensive line was the most surprising unit to me. Like I said, you can talk about 18 sacks, but I guarantee you those are not 18 true sacks that have been given to the offensive line within the Falcons locker room. Whenever they had to go over film, I guarantee you some of those sacks have ever been attributed to a running back not blocking, or a tight end, or even the quarterback. As far as defense has been, I think we all said linebacker would probably be a strength for us. That's why we was able to get rid of Deion Jones, trade him, because we felt comfortable with the linebackers we have. Like I said, can't really give a grade on secondary. They've been injured. Defense line, Taquan Graham, he made a blunder, but he shouldn't have been in the position in the first place. But he's been outstanding this year. He's part of that core moving forward. But there was two other things I wanted to piggyback off of what Nate said earlier when we were talking about defense. Did you know that the defense is we're averaging giving up 300 passing yards per game? That is atrocious. However, on the flip side, we're only giving up 400 yards total, which means we're only giving up 100 yards of rushing, which is top 8 in the NFL. That's pretty good. Granted, the Falcons have generally always been a great rushing defensive team, even back to the Dan Quinn era. They were always in the top 11 at least. It was always the back end. I say that to say it's interesting that we're giving up 300 passing yards per game, but we're in the top half of the league in forcing turnovers. We're in the top 12 of forcing interceptions. We're in the top, we're actually in the top 8 of interceptions, top 12 of generating fumbles. We're only one of like 16 teams that have a plus in the turnover margin. Good teams turn the ball over, force turnovers, and they limit turnovers on the offensive end, which means we're only one of 15 teams that are in the green. There's 15 teams under us, which is confusing when you think about it, because we're giving up 300 passing yards per game, but we're in the top half of interceptions. We're in like the top third of forcing interceptions. We are the epitome of bend but don't break. Like we'll get our turnovers, but we're just giving up chunk yards, and sometimes it's frustrating because I remember, I'm sure many of you remember, just going back to a couple of years ago when we blew leads against the Bears in the second half when they brought in Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. He came in and won the game, and he's like, sometimes you look at the formations and it's just like, why are we playing 10 yards off? Like, and Dean Pease, he knows more football. He's lost the knowledge of more football than I'll ever know. But it just makes you wonder, where is the disconnect? Because there is talent, like Nate said. There may not be Super Bowl level talent across the board right now, but there is enough talent to where we should not be giving up 300 yards per game. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I just had to add that. But yes, the offensive line has been the area that surprised me the most, and I'm excited to see how they continue to grow and flourish as the season goes on.
Nah, you were correct with what you did. I'm glad you hit on that, because the offensive line has been solid most of the year, and like you said, I think they have a total of 21 sacks. But I'll be honest with you, probably 7 or 8 of them are on Marcus Mariota, especially the last 2 home games where he's out there trying to be a diet version of Michael Vick and get sacked 10 yards in the pocket. That irritates me about him. I like the fact that he's mobile, but he does some boneheaded stuff in that pocket. Or there's been a couple of times where they've sent an all-out blitz, and there's just nothing you can do about that. To be honest, I will say the offensive line may have had one truly bad game, and that was against the Bengals. And other than that, like, I can't say that they've been a bad unit, which in previous years that's not always been the case. I still think that the Falcons do need to upgrade the guard position at left guard and possibly get another center. But overall, they've done enough for them to compete this year. And as Mike mentioned earlier, the Falcons are the 10th best team in forcing turnovers in the league this year. So they're getting the turnovers that are necessary. And I can't disagree with anything that you said as far as the strength of this team. The strength of this team has been shockingly the offensive line. The running back depth has been outstanding. First of all, Terry Fontenot, I love you to death. However, you had no business going to sign Damian Williams. He was a waste of money, because you had Caleb Huntley sitting on your practice squad who's come in and had an outstanding. He's been solid when he comes in the game. Tyler Algier is almost at 500 yards rushing which is impressive for a running back because we haven't had a running back even get close to that through this first half since Coleman and Freeman. So just to even have a rushing attack show up is impressive. But also, I agree with the linebacker. I hope the Falcons do look into re-signing Rashaan Evans and Lorenzo Carter. They have both been productive this year. I really would love to see those two back in the Falcon uniform in 23. They're on a one-year deal. Of course, we've seen potential, and Michael Walker's talented. Troy Anderson needs more snaps on the defense. I keep screaming this every single week. He needs more snaps. Also, I agree with Mike, though, because that's the strength of this team. I would say the weakness of this team right now is probably the secondary. I really think that the safety position is weaker than a lot of folks are giving the credit for. Richie Grant is a solid piece. I think Jalen Hawkins is a really good rotational safety, but we really need somebody that's on that back end that can really produce, because it has been a flaw that we've had since the Ricardo Allen, Keanu Neal days. So this team really got to get better in that unit. But overall, they are very, very pretty. They're very good for what they've done so far. Like Mike said, we've been a bend but don't break team. They be on the field a lot. So that's another thing. The defense has been on the field a lot. They've given up the second most third downs. They've been on the field like the second longest, I think, through the first 9 weeks. So a lot of it is you're not getting the stops that you need. And I think that also goes back to Dean Pease to an extent. Dean Pease needs to be a family man. I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. I know some people like Dean Pease. I'm not really a fan of his. I think for a guy that wants to blitz, I feel that we blitz at the wrong times. I feel that we're 10 yards off the ball at the wrong time. Like we said, like the DJ Moore game, quote unquote, potential game winner 2 weeks ago, you had a safety and a linebacker matched up with DJ Moore. And if the 70,000 people at the Benz saw that matchup, how did the defensive coordinator not see it? So I have my weekend and weekend out gripes with Dean Pease on a lot of things with this team. But, overall, like I said, there are some signs of strength within this team that we've got a chance to see. But I want to go to this. I want to try to go to this topic real quick. I know the game starts at 8 o'clock. Everyone that's going to be tuned in. The Falcons and Panthers start at 8 o'clock on NFL Prime. Amazon Prime. And if you have NFL Plus, all folks in Atlanta, it's a Fox 5 game. But I also went and pulled this up also, Mike, because we are getting towards mock draft time. Even though the Falcons have a long way to go, I'm not sitting here saying the season is over, but I would like to give a first couple of weeks of a mock draft prediction. I'm going to go ahead and name off to you who the guys are to this point, and then I'm going to let you tell me what you think about these guys so far. So I went to 5 different mocks, and I'm giving you guys who the Falcons are projected to take. They're 15th if the draft was to start today in April. So Walter Football has the Falcons taking defensive end Jared Verse out of Florida State. I'm not surprised the guy was taking a defensive end. We don't have a lot of sacks, so who would be surprised at that? Very intriguing pick from USA Today. They have us taking Anthony Richardson out of the University of Florida, which, yeah. So that's one thing I think they're looking at, the fact that the Falcons may need to upgrade the quarterback position, which we kind of aware of, but that goes back into play of what me and Mike was talking about already, of potentially seeing Desmond Ridder at some point. However, with the Falcons being in the playoff mix, it's going to be hard to kind of gauge your quarterback position this season because you've overachieved through the first 9 weeks. Okay, moving on to the other 3. 2 guys from CBS Sports, Josh Edwards, have the Falcons taking another wide receiver this year. Have us taking Jordan Addison out of USC. It would be the second straight year if we did go get him. I love this pick that Christian Prosser has us taking, this Andre Carter, the DN out of Army. I would love for him to be in a Falcon uniform in 23 out there with Grady Jarrett. And then last but not least, another pick I wouldn't be against, Sports Illustrated has us taking Bijan Robinson out of the University of Texas at 15. So Now that you've heard those 5 picks, what do you kind of feel like from what they have saying, and what do you think the national pundits are kind of leaning towards where the Falcons may need the most?
You know, the Falcons are going to have to draft a quarterback at some point unless you are committed to Desmond Ridder. However, if you're not committed to Marcus Mariota, and let's say you make the playoffs this year and you go out in the first round, but you have a good fight, you have a good showing, but the consensus around the organization and around the pundits is that quarterback is what's holding the Falcons back. Now you're in a decision. You can't sugarcoat it anymore. Is Desmond Ridder your guy? If he's not, don't sit here and waste picks on other things when you know he's not your guy. When you know somebody's your guy, you go and get him. So if you don't believe he's your guy, don't sell that to the fans. The fans can smell BS a mile away. We can smell it before you even try to sell it to us. So if he's not your guy, you got the cap space to go out and get a quarterback. And I'm not one of these guys one of these hype guys, but I believe if Lamar Jackson is still in play, then you go get him because I feel like he will work in this offense. But I know that's not the segment for this time, but I'm just saying, like, as far as quarterback, I don't think quarterback will be something that we address in this draft. Unless they see a guy in the 3rd or 4th round, they're like, oh, wow, how is he still there? Running back is a little bit more interesting. And I say this only because of Cordero Patterson's age. And I used to be one of those guys where I'm like, you don't have to have a top 5 running back to be a great team. And I still, to some degree, believe that. But where Arthur Smith came from in Tennessee, he wants his Derrick Henry type. And I don't know if we have that. We're more of a running back by committee. And Cordero's getting up there in age, so which means you're going to have to start leaning on Algier or Caleb Huntley or I think the Bijan Robinson thing could have, there could be some smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. But it's so tough to say about drafting a running back in the 1st round. Like, even if that's your guy, like, let's look at even Najee Harris. Najee Harris was all-world last year, all-world at Alabama, but the Steelers are starting cutting back on his carries right now, whether that's due to injuries. They won't say. He won't say. He says he's 100%. And then you think about Ezekiel Elliott. He was so good he was elite for 3 or 4 years. And now, they want to lean on him still, but because of that salary. But it's evident that offense is flourishing at a higher pace when Tony Pollard is in the game because of his speed factor, the way he's just so electric. But you got that Zeke Elliott contract that you're trying to validate. And so running back is just so it's a difficult position to gauge. I don't know if the Falcons would draft a running back in the 1st round. Personally, if that was me getting paid and my job is on the line, I don't think I would draft a running back in the 1st round. I would look to free agency maybe, or maybe look to the later rounds. But the 1st round is something that I'm going to try to stay away from because even if he's generational, how long is he going to be generational? Look at Alvin Kamara. He's still a great running back, but he's not the Alvin Kamara of 2 or 3 years ago. Alvin Kamara scored, 7 touchdowns on Christmas? He's not going to do that anymore. And you can say that's because of the offense. That's because of no Drew Brees, Sean Payton. Okay, there you go. You can't build around a running back because he's your best player on offense right now. And look at what their record is. So right now I think I'm out on running back and quarterback. So, man, that's tough because I think we should bring back, like you said, Evans. I think we should bring back what's the guy from Georgia? He's slipping my mind right now. The linebacker. Lorenzo Carter. It's tough, man. I think it's tough, but at the same time, it's a good predicament to be in. You could also. I was during the preseason show. I was mentioning Keely Ringo. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to give AJ Terrell. I mean, we're giving up 300 passing yards per game. It wouldn't be a bad. It wouldn't be a bad idea to draft a cornerback in the first round to solidify that secondary, something that we haven't done in a long time. So I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'm concerned about the safety position. I'm a huge fan of Richie Grant. However, I've seen him getting blown up on several occasions, and it's not been pretty. And I get it. It happens. Just like in basketball, if you're a shot blocker, you're going to get dunked on. But I think that's a weakness in the defense right now, more so than the corners because we know the injury issue. But I think safety may be one of the weakest positions on the team right now. So I think safety is something we look at potentially in the first round. Depending on like Nate said, depending on where we finish. If we're drafting early, I think we may go for a bigger splash, maybe the interior. But on the back end, if we're in the back end because we do well in the playoffs, I'm thinking safety. And this may not be, you may be angry with me, but I think we could go offensive line again. And I just think that's because when you do get your guy quarterback, you want to have everything in place. You have an elite tight end when you give him the ball. You have a top 10 drafted receiver that's shown some glimpses of being really, really good. He's physical. He's big. He's slow. We're overly exaggerated. He gets open. He makes plays. I'm not concerned about his speed or lack thereof. So those are the three positions actually. Safety could be addressed in the first round. You may add another playmaker at receiver because we just got rid of Calvin Ridley. That was my big thing. That was a pick that we didn't have to waste on receiver because we had Calvin Ridley coming back next year. But since we traded him, I do think receiver. I'm going out on a limb. I'm predicting the Falcons will draft a receiver within the first 3 rounds. Mic that up. So safety, receiver, and I also believe offensive line will be addressed, could be addressed in the first round. So I'm ruling out quarterback and running back in the first round, and I'm saying that we're going to either draft a receiver, a safety, or an offensive lineman. And it depends on where we are in the draft. We could go defensive line, but I'm sticking with those 3 positions. You can lock me in. You can screenshot this, video record. Receiver, safety, offensive line. That's what I'm looking for the Falcons to draft in the first round this year.
Hey, I'm with you on those 3 positions too. I also wouldn't rule out a wide receiver because with Calvin Ridley being traded to the Jaguars, you now have a wide receiver one. You need another guy that's going to open that offense up from Drake London. To me, the Falcons need a take the top off threat. So if he's healthy, I'm not against the Falcons putting that first rounder on Jackson Smith if he falls to 15. That's a guy who I wouldn't be. Go ahead.
I hate to cut you off, Nate, but what makes this even more so difficult to project and forecast, and I know you can even speak to this, which I'm going to let you, is we have north of $80 million in cap space. That makes it so difficult to project a draft when you can go out and get a guy in free agency.
That is true. That's another thing that the Falcons are going to be in play for. And then also, as Mike mentioned, it's really going to depend on what we do this offseason because Falcon fans, y'all may not realize this, but the Falcons could possibly, if they're not pleased with Mariota at the end of the season, they could cut him and save $12 million. So we could go from being close to 80 or having over $90 million of cap space heading into free agency. So that could be another play-in for us as well. So as Mike said, like going in, I don't think quarterback is going to be a top pick. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Falcons are going to look definitely like Mike said. Honestly, I think the number one need is going to be going to defense. I think they're going to get somebody on defense because you don't have that legitimate playmaker on defense that you can say outside of AJ Terrell and Grady Jarrett. You need that other splash to where this guy right here we have to worry about. There are guys with potential, but there is not a person where you are game planning for him. And that's where, like Mike said, I could see a potential Keely Ringo at 15, a Miles Murphy or a Trenton Thompson from Clemson. Or Brian Breesy from Clemson. You got several guys who could fall in that mid-tier range. Also, like we were just talking about, a wide receiver is not out of play because you're going to need a wide receiver too. I love Zacchaeus. I love Jameer Byrd. You guys are rotational guys. You need a true wide receiver too. This is probably the first, last year was the first time I seen the Falcons receiving corps be that bad ever. We've always had at least a halfway decent receiver to an elite one of some sort. So last year was a really weird year for the Falcons in that spot. And also, I do agree. Don't be if the Falcons choose to go get an offensive lineman, I would not be mad at that. Because once again, if you're saying, like Mike mentioned, that Desmond Ridder is your guy going forward, you got to put an offensive line around him. That is the one thing I will respect about the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys ticked their fans off for like 3 or 4 years and was going Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, Lyle Collins. They were going lineman. And they went and made that splash for Zeke in 16, and then they were 13-3 out the gate as the number 1 seed. So you have to start setting yourself up for what your team is going to be. And like Mike mentioned, he's used to having a Derrick Henry, but that offensive line was able to do what they had to do to get he thrived. And also you got to have good offensive line play. And then you got to also be able to spread that ball because, again, you put those picks on Pitts in London, letting us know these are generational talent guys that's going to change the shape of our offense. So now, if you're telling us we want to get some talent, we're trying to get this offense in shape, you got to make a decision on what you're trying to build this team on. Because I'm going to be honest, Arthur Smith has proven on offense he can work with what's given to him. Look at Cordero Patterson. This is a guy that was a journeyman and turned into an elite running back in the last 2 years with the Falcons. But nothing on defense has showed me that Dean Pease can turn a guy into an elite playmaker. AJ Terrell was already nice. Grady Jarrett's already Grady Jarrett. He ain't did nothing for those two guys to be productive like they are. So, again, if you find that talent is going to put this defense over the top, go get it. So I definitely agree with what Mike is saying. But we are getting within 30 minutes from kickoff, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But before we go, I want to ask Mike, if you have a score prediction for tonight, what do you have, and how do you think this game is going to go?
So before I do that real quick, if I had to pick today who the Falcons would draft in the first round, I like the receiver for Ohio State because he's been slipping on draft boards because he's been injured, which isn't fair. But that can be solidified at combines. He'll shoot right back up. I'm thinking about the cornerback for South Carolina, Cam Smith. So for the fans out there that are watching today, go look up some of his highlights. He's a solid player. South Carolina has done. They've exceeded expectations this year, and that's based primarily off of him. But prediction, Nate put me on the spot. I really haven't thought about this, so man, I got to factor in the weather because Nate said it was raining up there. So man, who does that even favor? Because when we faced them last time, although they were exploiting our secondary, Foreman was running like Derrick Henry in the second half. So man, that's tough. I'm gonna go if it becomes a slugfest. I believe we have the better running scheme, we have the better offensive line, we have the better running backs, and we have the better rush defense. I believe they're more of a get to the quarterback type of team. I'm gonna go with the Falcons to win. And Thursday night football has been terrible for the most part offensively for the first like 4 or 5 weeks. It has picked up lately. So I'm gonna go with the trend that this is gonna be a game where both teams may score in the 20s. I'm gonna go Falcons 27, Panthers 21. And this is not going to be one of those games where, the Falcons had to score late. I think this is going to be one of those things where the Falcons have to hang on. They're going to be in a position to have a defensive stand to prevent the Panthers from tying the game up and extending the game. But I think the Falcons jump out to like a 14-3 lead, and they coast until the end. Typical Falcons football.
I got the Falcons winning 27-17. I think it's going to be a sloppy game, and I think the Falcons are going to I think they're going to be able to run the ball. They're going to be able to run the ball just like the previous week, but I also think that the Falcons are going to play keep away ball too in this game and not let PJ Walker get a chance to thrive like he was doing in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. And then it's 4 days later from a slugfest with the LA Chargers. So I think the Falcons are going to get that running game going, and it should be, and I think they're going to get a score late to put this game out of reach. I think it's going to be a back and forth one from to that point. So I have the Falcons winning 27-17, getting back to 500 as you get ready to come home in 10 days against the Chicago Bears. Hopefully these guys can take advantage of these 10 days and get healthy after this game, because you got a home game coming up, got the Commanders after that. You got 2 of your next 3 at home after this. So hopefully these guys get healthy in time, and hopefully we get AJ Terrell back next week against the Chicago Bears. But
yeah,
go ahead, bro.
I think this, I don't like saying this, but I think this is a must win. Tampa goes to Germany facing the Seahawks. You don't know what teams, how they're gonna be going into a different country like that. I think Seattle's a little bit more well coached with Pete Carroll and what they've been doing with Geno. I think Seattle's going to win that game. You need to win this game because you lost last week. Bucks won. I think you really need this game. I think it's must win because you want to stay a game ahead, just to give you some leeway going into that back end game against Tampa at the end of the season. You don't want that game to mean anything as far as like the division. You want it to more so be like home field. So I think this is a must win. We got to take care of business. This is a game that we need. This is a game that we should win. We're a favorite to win. We need to win this game. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it in that locker room. I guarantee they're saying the same thing. They're not overlooking them, but they're saying this is a must win. This is a game that we should win.
I agree 100%. And if Mike has to say this is going to be the end of the show, we will be back on here maybe tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, we'll be on here for sure this weekend to discuss this game. Went ahead and gave y'all a pop-up preview and just touch on the Falcons for the first 9 weeks because it's a late game. And, of course, most of y'all probably going to be knocked out when this game is over because it's an 8 o'clock game. And, of course, they don't end till 11 o'clock. Probably myself, I'll probably sleep after the game over too. But with that being said, if Mike don't have anything else to say, this is going to be the end of All In with Nate for now.
Love y'all. Thank y'all for supporting us. Continue to share and continue to just show support. We appreciate it. We couldn't do this without.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Until next time, everyone, this has been another episode of All In with Nate. We're signing off, and go Falcons. Please don't embarrass us in front of company tonight, guys. Please don't.